Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, football fans. I'm Ryan Cato here with Hunter Thompson, Trevor McVeigh. We're the backups of Football Podcast. We took a little bye week last week due to the election, which I will not talk about on this podcast because we will, quote, stick to football, RIP, by the way. And getting right into it, I know we have news and specifically of a couple quarterbacks who went down to Rona this week. Trevor, you have those?
Yeah, not too much of news this week, but the big one is there's one undefeated team left, and they just lost their QB to COVID, which is Big Ben. I'm not sure who they play next week. I'll check that in a second, but that could ruin their undefeated streak, especially if they have to start Mason Rudolph, which is not ideal.
I feel like it's gonna be Duck Hodges.
Oh, they
before
play
Mason
at
Rudolph.
home against Cincy, and Cincy's no easy game this year, surprisingly.
I think the defense will still carry Pittsburgh past Cincinnati, despite what that what the offense will be able to do under Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph, whoever the hell it is. I mean, health, like, throw me out there, but last week that was a bit of a stretch against the Cowboys, which was pretty weird. So who knows with this coming
That
up?
was a weird one. Another one, Sam Darnold went down. I'm not sure what injury it was, so Joe Flacco got to start up in New York. What ended up being a pretty decent game. I think we're gonna end up talking about later. What else is there this week?
I think that's about it. We
Yeah,
did
that's
talk
kind of
about
it.
Trevor Lawrence getting COVID.
Trevor Lawrence got COVID. Ended up losing their game against Notre Dame, which was game of the week. That if you can rewatch it, I would highly recommend you go back and rewatch it, or at least the highlights. It was a crazy game.
For sure.
Another one was Christian McCaffrey returned for the first time this season since week 1 or 2, and had a really solid game, but then he ended up banging up his shoulder, I believe, so he's questionable again. So I'm sure fantasy players are pretty upset who have McCaffrey.
Yeah, Hunter, you want to speak to that?
Yo, I don't want to talk about it. McCaffrey carried me in my win, but now I might lose him again. So I'm just kind of an emotional roller coaster right now.
What was your
Yeah.
record without McCaffrey?
9-1. So
5-1. Wait,
7-1
without 5-1 without McCaffrey.
So that's pretty good. I will
you
say,
were really hurting there.
I'm never rooting for an injury, of course.
Yeah, but my one loss happened with McCaffrey, or without McCaffrey. So like how?
You could be undefeated.
That doesn't seem like McCaffrey's fault, but I did keep Mike Davis on my bench this week. So I'm hoping they'll be careful with McCaffrey. Maybe he's feeling a little tender before the game, and they'll just keep in my boy Mike 28 Davis. If Mike Davis, if anybody dropped him in your league, go ahead and scoop him up because it's a very possible start this week after McCaffrey's injury. We did mention the Jets-Patriots game this week, and I think we're just going to go straight into game of the week. Like Trevor said, we didn't have too much news, and I know, Hunter, you were dying to talk about the game of the week, Monday Night Football, Jets-Pats.
Okay.
Woo!
So if you weren't keeping up with Cato and I on Twitter, we were getting drunk in a taco Mac watching this game.
That's true.
In this game, we saw Broadway Joe Flacco leading the Jets to what looked like it was going to be their first win. Obviously, it didn't happen because Cam Newton went all Superman again at the end of the game. Right when Nickelback came on, Cam Newton started playing well. I'm telling y'all that's
crazy.
That's what happened.
We're sitting at the bar at this taco Mac, and Hunter's got us a pitcher of Bud Light. He's a well-to-do man. He's got deep pockets, so he's got us a pitcher of Bud Light. We're sitting there drinking cheap beer, and Nickelback's Photograph comes on. Look at this photograph. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, and Cam Newton pushes that shit straight up the middle for 10 yards. I swear to God. I was like, what on earth? I
swear to God, like, as soon as that happened, I was like, as soon as I heard Nickelback start and it was 4th and 1, Cam was under center, I was like, oh no.
Time for vintage, baby. And then he throws the pass to Jacoby Myers over the center, like 20 something yards. and sets
Put
up
them
the,
right in field
the
goal,
Nick Folk,
right
the
in
Nick
field
Folk
goal
chip
range.
shot. And Nick Folk ended that game against his former team and took the Patriots to victory. Absolutely ridiculous.
It was insane. But one thing I did think about during that game, the Jets are bad, but they're not as bad as everyone says. Jordan
I
Reed
think this might
from
have been their
draft.
best game of the season, to be honest, though.
Oh, 100%, yeah. But Jordan Reed was talking about it on Twitter. He was talking about how, yes, their roster is very, talentless, but they do weirdly have a few good, solid pieces in play. This past draft class, Denzel Mims, Ashton Davis, Mekhi Becton, incredible. LaMichael Pirine could be good.
Yeah.
Solid. That's what I'm saying. Like, Joe Douglas looks to be a good GM. You know who's not a good GM? Bill Belichick.
Oh my God, we're talking about it again.
Dude, I'm going to keep going on this until they replace him as GM. That roster is so bad. You're letting Joe Flacco get a lead on you in 2020?
Hunter, they have the same amount of wins as the Falcons.
Who fired their coach? The Falcons did.
Yeah, but it's not a coaching issue.
That's what I'm saying. It's a GM issue. You know who also fired their GM? The Falcons.
I think you're being a little unfair. Let's put this into perspective.
Unfair? Their leading receiver is Jacoby Myers.
Jacoby Myers is fine. Listen.
You have a first-round pick in N'Keal Harry.
Listen. All right. So let's put it in perspective. Their quarterback has been there for 20 years, just left. And then the quarterback they ended up starting the season ends up going to their roster late. They had, I think, 5 to 7 guys on defense opt out. So, and then they have maybe 1 or 2 guys. I will admit the wide receiver core there is trash. N'Keal Harry's been a bust so far.
You used a first-round pick on Sony Michel to have the same thing as Damian Harris.
I want to hear Trevor.
So to put this in perspective, our team is the Falcons. So let's say the Falcons have Matt Ryan leave, and then in that next season, they signed Cam Newton like 2 months beforehand. Now, they don't have Julio, Calvin Ridley, and their best receiver is like a little bit better than Russell Gage. Then on defense, there's no Deion Jones, there's no Keanu Neal, no Stephon Gilmore. Well, Stephon Gilmore's on the Patriots, but he's not playing for them right now because of COVID, I believe. All of them opt out because of COVID. So that roster is what they're running with this season, and with terrible Cam Newton, who's been really bad the last 6 weeks. So yes, the roster is not that great, but I think you're being a little unfair with how bad it is.
I'm telling you that the thing, if you took those Patriots situations and still applied to the Falcons roster, we're still better because we still have receivers. We have a running back, not a great running back, but still somewhat of a running back. We still have a competent offensive line.
I do want to say though, the Patriots, if you look at their losses, I mean, you want to talk about the teams they lost to: Seahawks, Chiefs. I mean, the Bills. So it's not like they're losing to slouch teams.
Yeah, those are damn
they do have a loss to the 49ers, who we might talk about later in a different segment, as well as to the Broncos. That was tough. But otherwise, 3 out of their 5 losses are to top teams. So I think it's a tough transitional year out of Tom Brady.
Yep.
And we're gonna see. I mean, I think it's an overreaction because it's been one season. All I'm
saying is you expected Tom Brady to win you a Super Bowl with this skill position group. That's not fair to him, and that's not fair to your fan base as the Patriots.
They didn't. They went 10-6, but that's what I'm saying.
They still expected Brady to get them back to the Super Bowl because that's what Brady does. I'm not saying you're saying Bill's a bad coach. I think Bill's a great coach. I think Bill's the best coach of all time.
More than Cam Newton. That offense was built for Tom Brady, and it works for Tom Brady.
We did talk about
Hunter. 2 different skill sets between Cam and Tom Brady.
Yeah, I agree. We did talk about how Josh McDaniels' offense looked antiquated.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. The whole thing. Though. He's the one who's keeping Josh McDaniels around.
Well, fair. Maybe that's an issue, but we were talking about personnel a minute ago.
But what I'm saying is all these issues that we're pointing to when we point to the Patriots, point back to Bill in some way or another. Do I think Bill is an incredible coach still? Yes. But I think personnel-wise, he needs to do better. And I think he needs to hold his coaching staff accountable.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I agree. But we are, 8 games into no Tom Brady, like I said. So it's transitional, and maybe after this year, if they're sticking with Cam Newton, if that's the plan, which I don't think it is, but if they were to stick with Cam Newton, then they're going to have to make some adjustments on the offense. No matter who their quarterback is, they're going to have to make some adjustments on the offense. They're going to have to. I mean, they're going to have a high draft pick. They'll probably pick a defensive player if I know Bill Belichick, but we'll see.
That's the problem, though. When you look at the past 3 first-round draft picks on the offensive side of the ball that they've had, N'Keal Harry, Sony Michel, and Isaiah Wynn, have a single one of them panned out to be even remotely decent?
Isaiah Wynn's been banged up his career. Sony Michel's been banged
Same.
up, but also really underperformed. N'Keal Harry, I mean, he was banged up as well, but he's been
not
out there this
not
whole
good.
season. He's been healthy, and he's done nothing. Granted, he's got Cam Newton throwing to him, who I'm not that high on. But
Wasn't he like your middle-of-the-road quarterback this year in your QB rankings?
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, fans. I stopped updating that. I apologize. Maybe I'll jump back into it a little later. But actually, the last I updated it is when he had his like MVP looking stretch. So he was like, I think he may have cracked the top 10. And then I haven't updated it since like week 4, I think, which is a little embarrassing. But I do want to mention 2 more things. Is one, Frank Gore's old ass is still out there leading them in rushing. And 2,
That's true.
a rookie out of Baylor, Mr. Denzel Mims, had a really solid game. 4 catches for 62 yards. That was nice to see in such a deep wide receiver class.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
I look at the like you mentioned before, Hunter. I look at the Jets' offensive positions, and I'm not like too upset at it. Brashad Perryman looked really good last night. Denzel Mims,
he
like you
did.
said, looked good. Jamison Crowder still looks good.
That touchdown by Crowder?
Yeah, that was nuts.
Ooh.
That was
That
nuts.
was
the toe
beautiful.
drag.
Ooh.
So
The toe drag? Oh.
like you said, maybe we get Adam Gase out of there, keep Joe Douglas, get a new coach, have a new quarterback, and suddenly maybe you're a new team. Maybe you're at least a 6-win team next year if you can make some real adjustments with the talent on that offense.
If you get Trevor Lawrence and then draft well the rest of the way with a competent coach, I don't see why you might not even be like an 8-win team, especially just with how the Patriots are looking.
Which is pretty crazy to say.
With how the Bills defense is.
That's fair. It's pretty crazy to say that with the Jets who are 0-9 right now, but I really do see potential in that offense. And speaking of potential in an offense, I do want to talk about my game of the week, KC and Carolina, which was a much closer game than I expected it to be. And obviously, we can talk about the Kansas City Chiefs all the time. They're an absolute blast to watch. They have the $500 million man on their roster, but that's not who I was really focused on this week. I was focused on the Carolina Panthers, who we did talk about just before the episode started, that they've been on a bit of a skid over the past few games. But I really see some talent in that offense. Teddy Bridgewater has been a solid quarterback for them. He threw for 310 and 2 touchdowns last week and ran for 1. So 3 total touchdowns for him. McCaffrey, obviously, we know he's a star. Curtis Samuels looked really good over the past few weeks. Robbie Anderson has been a solid, like, 10 or 12 target a game guy. And both DJ Moore and Mike Davis have been solid target guys too. So I really think that the Panthers, and especially under the coaching that they've brought in, I think the Panthers are looking really good. And this is a really good sign for the Panthers in weeks and seasons to come.
Oh, yeah. I think Matt Rule is hitting this year. I know their record doesn't really show it, but I can't compliment him enough on how well that team looks. Like, they're making every week competitive against good teams. I think this game came down to a last-second field goal by KC to win this game at home. Joe Brady's offense is, I mean, of course, it's not LSU level, but it's looking pretty damn good with Teddy Bridgewater and receivers who aren't nearly as good as what LSU had. Curtis Samuel, like you mentioned, the last like 3 weeks is like Joe Brady's using him in the run game, pass game. He's got him going
In all the
everywhere.
right ways. Yep.
Exactly. Then Robbie Anderson, who I didn't think was going to work with Teddy B, because I thought he's just a deep threat guy, because kind of all he did was Sam Darnold. They've had a really good connection, and he's doing plenty of production. McCaffrey comes back and is the same old McCaffrey, just a freaking touch monster and yard monster. I think he had 2 TDs. So really great performance by Carolina. I know they lost. It sucks. KC, I mean, grinded out another win. Mahomes had 4 TDs. Overall, like this game was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can sit here and talk about how great Kansas City is all episode because they are. They're that
Right.
good. But if we talk about Carolina for a minute, like Matt Rule has really done wonders there. Joe Brady is looking to be like the next hot commodity in the NFL coaching sphere. Um, I saw the stat the other day talking about how the Panthers are 0-3 when Christian McCaffrey plays this season, which just blows my mind.
I mean, one of those was against the Chiefs. I don't
I
know
don't know
about
if it
the
was
other
included
two.
in that, to be honest with you.
Gotcha.
But either way, though, like it blows my mind how competitive this roster has been this season. Because
Yeah.
like when I was going into the season, I definitely thought they were going to be by far one of the worst teams in the NFC. I thought they were going to be picking top 5, maybe even contention for the number 1 pick,
Yeah.
where we might see them draft like a Trevor Lawrence, But they might still pick top 5, but like they don't deserve to be in that top 5 range.
No. I do want to mention one more guy, DJ Moore. He's kind of been phased out of this offense, really, in my opinion. I mean, he was a former first-round pick in 2018, and I don't really see the targets, or I'm just not sure if he really has it. He might be a bust.
Yeah, I know he's been sort of in and out this season when it comes to the targets and stuff like that because earlier in the season he had a couple stat lines that were like really popping. I mean, like 8 for 120 against Tampa during week 2, and as well as a couple of games that almost eclipsed 100 yards, a couple 93-yard games. But yeah, over the past 2 weeks, production's been really down. So I think honestly that's just a result of bringing Curtis Samuel more into this offense and kind of getting the target shares around. I think DJ Moore's still doing a good job, and I think DJ Moore probably attracts those CB1 types. They're gonna make him the first coverage target, and then that leaves room for everybody else. So.
Well, I would think with the amount of targets that Robbie Anderson is getting, it'd probably be Robbie Anderson catching the majority of the attention from the DBs. Just a theory.
Yeah, I'm in. We'll definitely see coming into each week. I think Joe Brady definitely knows how to get his targets around. I'd love to hear about your game of the week, though, Trevor, because I know you love to talk about your boy.
Oh, baby. It's still Tua time. Tua is 2-0. On the road against Arizona, come out winning 34-31. Last week they had a win, excuse me, but their defensive special teams carried them. But this week, Tua really showed out. He had 2 touchdowns and 250 yards. He also had 35 yards rushing. I really love this. I mean, the O-line's not great. So the fact that he's doing this amount of production behind that O-line is fantastic. Him and P.J. Williams and Devontae Parker are having a good connection this week. Last week was kind of shaky. But hopefully he can continue that in weeks to come. I think this was a rematch of like the 2018 playoffs between Tua and Kyler. Kyler on the other side also had a good game. He had 3 TDs, just under 300 yards passing, and had over 100 yards rushing. And he still lost at home, which tells you how bad their defense is. overall, I mean, this game was wild. Kyler, I think, is still one of my favorite QBs to watch in the whole league, and it's just a really fun game.
I do want to mention too, out of that Arizona Miami game, which Miami's been on kind of a tear, but something to mention fantasy wise, Christian Kirk of the Arizona Cardinals has had back to back 20+ point games, and
Really?
available in quite a few leagues. It's been a little touchdown dependent, but he went 5 for 123 last week with a touchdown. So if he is available in your league, he's not available in ours, and that's because I have him already. But if he's available in your league, that might be a good pickup for next week against Buffalo, and then the next week against Seattle.
D-Hop only had 3 targets. Must have just went to sleep.
I guess so.
The Byron Jones, Xavier Howard duo.
It's a good young quarterback duo.
That's what I'm saying, dude. The corners there, very good. I mean,
yeah. The
dude,
Dolphins,
Dolphins are good. They got a good core of players going.
The Dolphins did pick a cornerback with a later pick in the first round, though, who has not turned out too well. Noah Igbehigbembe.
Yeah, the Auburn quarter.
Please forgive me.
Igbenogany.
Igbenogany. Something like that.
I wish
I'll look it up, and then I'll say it right next podcast.
I mean, I didn't like the pick when it happened.
No,
I
neither
thought,
did I.
I thought it was a really bad pick.
Hunter and I were actually talking about the corner class from last year, how it was like we felt like there were so many reaches, like with Damon Arnett in the first round, along with Noah Igbenogany and a couple others. It was just a weird cornerback.
I mean, Damon Arnett's not been terrible.
Yeah, but at the time,
The surprising one to me is freaking Jeff Okudah. What happened?
Yeah, Jeff Okudah has not been very good, and he was like pretty much the clear CB1. Aside
his
from Henderson.
tape was awesome. It was fantastic against good wide receivers.
I mean, it's probably just the defensive change, and like the transition of it, because the receivers you go against in the NFL are obviously so much better than they are in college. But if I remember right, Okudah had a weird learning curve at Ohio State too.
I can't remember.
He is playing the NFC North, so I mean that means
Devontae Adams twice.
That means
Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson or Thielen.
Allen Robinson twice.
Allen Robinson.
So that's a pretty tough division to defend. I think that Okudah still has time, but he has been pretty weak for the 3rd overall pick. We did just talk about Miami, Arizona, and I want to transition straight into our new segment this week. We aren't doing surprise of the week this week. Instead, we're going to be playing a game. It's really a discussion, contender or pretender, and we just want to talk about some fringe playoff teams and talk about if they are playoff contenders or playoff pretenders. And since we just talked about Miami, Arizona, I would love to talk about the Miami Dolphins real quick. Miami Dolphins have been on kind of a tear, looking really good, 5-3, second in their division. Do we think they're a contender or pretender coming out of the AFC East?
For me, it's kind of early to tell because we've seen Fitzpatrick the last 6-7 weeks, but now we get Tua. So I think it's still a question mark for me just because I'm not sure what Tua will give us. But as far as like the last 2 weeks, if I have to go off that, I think they're contenders. I'd be a little bit worried about playing them just because of the defense, and Tua is kind of a wild card. I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders, but they could be go deeper than just one game.
Could they play against the teams they're going to see first round of the NFL playoffs? That's really
I think they could, yeah. If you look, they'll be playing a team like they won't be playing Pittsburgh, and they probably won't be playing KC. So if you look at the rest of the AFC, you're going to look at guys like Tennessee, Indianapolis, Baltimore,
Buffalo.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Miami's already been hanging with them, and they've already looked good. Brian Flores is a hell of a coach. I don't see why they could not be contenders and could not make a run.
Yeah, I'd say that the Dolphins are probably contenders. I think that they can hang with whoever they'll be playing first round. It's looking like probably if they're the last team in terms of the wild card, that'll probably be Buffalo that they're playing that first round. But the Dolphins are pretty much on par with the points for in the league right now. They're sitting at 222. That's about average, and have had a really strong defense actually. Only 161 points allowed, and that ranks pretty highly among defenses. So, like that's the same amount of points that the Steelers have allowed.
I've got a quick question. With there being 7 playoff teams this year, isn't there only one team that gets a bye? And if that's the case, wouldn't they play KC as it stands right now?
No, I believe it's 2 buys. Is that correct?
Well, then that would leave an odd number of playoff teams then.
I'll do some research, but while I'm doing that, I would love to hear about what you guys think. You mentioned this, Hunter, just a minute ago, a possible AFC South contender, Tennessee Titans, contender or pretender?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think they're going to make the playoffs, but obviously I don't think they're going to really compete this year in the playoffs.
So, playoff pretender?
Yeah, definitely pretender. Yeah.
Dude, you are underselling playoff Derrick Henry, baby.
That's fair.
Don't get me wrong. I have undersold Derrick Henry throughout his entire career. So he could definitely come in and prove me incredibly wrong. But I don't think Tennessee's looked that great this season. They haven't looked bad, but they haven't looked like the team that made the run last year.
I mean, last year it was the defense and KC, defense and Derrick Henry that single-handedly beat freaking Baltimore Ravens and the New England Patriots, which is wild. But the thing is, they have Derrick Henry this year, but they don't have the defense. I mean, they just cut Vic Beasley, who I think they paid like $8 million, something like that, and he had 1 tackle the entire season, so they cut him. He's been trash. The Davian Clowney, who was another big signing in the offseason, I don't think he has recorded a sack yet. So they put a lot of money in that DN position, and I think, Landry, what's his name? He's a DN who's been really good for them, or not really good. He's been pretty good for them.
Harold Landry?
Yes, he's been pretty solid. But other than that, I mean, nobody's really been able to get to the pass, the QB. The corners have been shaky. The linebacking core is fantastic, with Rashad Evans leading that. But the actual safeties and corners have been bad. So I would consider them it depends with the matchup, because they could hang in there with a shootout. Tannehill, Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Johnny Smith. It's a pretty good offense. But if it comes down to where it's a defensive battle, they're screwed.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the Titans are a pretender. The teams that they've been hanging with have not been too great thus far. Last week they had the Bears, and it was a 7-point difference, which we'll get to the Bears probably later. But I think the Tennessee Titans even at exactly. I think the Tennessee Titans even at 6-2 are a pretender. And I did look up the playoff format. Trevor, you're right. The top seed gets a bye. So if Miami were to make the playoff, they would probably be the 7, which would put them up against the 2, meaning Kansas City or Pittsburgh, most likely.
At KC in December, or at Pittsburgh in December.
That's going to be a tough call for the Dolphins, even if they do make the playoffs. But I'm still hopeful for the talent on that offense and defense. Let's keep moving in the AFC. We talked about the Steelers and the Ravens. Those are probably both pretty much playoff locks. But we talked about before on the episodes possibly seeing 3 playoff teams from the AFC North. I think that's looking less likely right now, as I'd see them as a pretender, but the Cleveland Browns.
Okay. So I think what are the Browns at? 6-2 right now?
5-3.
5-3. God, I don't think they're going to make it this year. I think Baker's probably going to choke down the stretch. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs. However, I just don't see that being the thing this year. I think they need another year under Stefanski and Andrew Berry to really kind of bring in a draft class that fits, evaluate the roster, and then work from there.
Yeah, I think the defense probably needs some beef.
These
And
guys are major pretenders.
yeah, I agree.
I just looked at their schedule. Every team that's above 500 as of week 8, they've lost to.
Mhm.
They've beat the Bengals twice. They beat Washington, Dallas, and Indy's
Indy.
actually 5-3. Excuse me, they beat Indy, but the rest they got blown out by the Steelers, got blown out by the Ravens, and they lost to the Raiders at home. So pretty abysmal. We'll see if Nick Chubb changes anything. But as far as I'm concerned, they're maybe the biggest pretender that has a winning record right now.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned a loss that they had there at the end. The Las Vegas Raiders. I know our boy Hunter Thompson is a big fan of them. Do you think the Las Vegas Raiders a contender or pretender coming into the AFC playoffs this year?
The Raiders are a fucking contender. I'm telling you, you put them in the playoffs. The John Gruden coach team is going to compete in the playoffs. Josh Jacobs, not necessarily had a great year. He hasn't been bad by any means, but he hasn't been amazing. Derek Carr is honestly putting up incredible numbers by Derek Carr standards this year. The defense is actually looking fairly competitive. And the fact that they're doing all this with holes still in their roster, I think they can compete with anybody this year. They're in the AFC West. They went toe-to-toe with KC not too long ago, I believe.
They beat KC, is that correct?
The BKC.
That's what it was. They
Week
beat
5.
KC.
Yeah, 40-32, week 5.
This is beat KC. I'm telling you that this is a team that can do it all. They might struggle with keeping up with the KC offense if that's who they run into the playoffs, but I think they can beat anyone else.
Yeah, I think it's. Oh, you got it.
Yeah, I'd consider them contenders. I don't consider them strong contenders, but I think they will hold off the Browns, Dolphins, and Colts as far as making it to the playoffs. And then they're a huge wild card, which they would be a wild card slot in the playoffs, but they're a major wild card as far as a team in the playoffs. Derek Carr, you don't know who you're going to get. Hopefully it's good Derek Carr. He is having a solid year, but we'll see how he is in the playoffs. But overall, John Gruden's had a pretty solid year with a pretty solid team, so I think they're a pretty legit team.
Yeah, I'll call them a contender. It's pretty weird looking at the up and down of their schedule. When you beat the Chiefs, but you lose to the Patriots. When you beat the I was just looking at it. Damn it! You beat the Saints, and then you lose to the Bucks, or you lose to or you almost lose to the Chargers as of last week. Obviously, the Chargers choked that one away.
Okay, to be fair, that Bucks game was a lot closer than the scoreboard indicates.
Yeah, but then the Bucks got blown out by the Saints this week, a team who the Raiders beat week
That's
1.
very
So
true.
so it's that's what I'm saying. It's just so up and down. I think it's unpredictable. I'll call them a contender. I'll call them a contender if we get a good week. But it's still a team that needs, I think, some beefing on the talent in terms of the receivers. And then the defense could always use a little bit something extra. Finally, I do want to talk about one more contender or pretender, and this one's kind of cheating because it's the entirety of the NFC West, save the Seattle Seahawks. I think the Seattle Seahawks are a clear contender. We've seen how high-powered that offense can be, however terrible the defense is, at least the secondary. But the rest of that division, which we talked about being one of the strongest divisions in football this year, has been pretty shaky. They've looked really good sometimes. They've looked pretty down. So the Cardinals, the Rams, and the 49ers, all three of them. We looking at contenders or pretenders there?
Boom, I'll jump on it. Okay, 49ers, too banged up. They are pretenders. They're not going to make it. They have a great coach. The roster just sitting there this year because of injuries. Rams, I'm going to say they're pretenders. I just don't think they're consistent enough to make it I'll have to look at the remaining schedule. I could be wrong. Maybe they have some cupcakes here and there, but I just don't see the consistency. Cardinals, on the other hand, are in every game, and I think if a couple plays go their way, they could be a lot better than their record shows. Even though they are 5-3, I think they could be a better team. I think they are pretenders, and I would be scared of them in the playoffs. Well, except for their defense. Their defense sucks. I'm sorry. Hunter, go.
Yeah, so I think breaking down the NFC West, I don't think San Fran. I think they've been hit by the injury bug too much this year to even limp into the playoffs. If they were to somehow limp into the playoffs, they are a team that would terrify the shit out of me.
With Nick Mullins?
With Nick Mullins, yeah. But I don't see that happening this season. The injury bug hit them bad. Arizona, I see making the playoffs, so they are a contender in my eyes. I think the offense is too high-powered to be stopped. And then LA, the thing with LA, you don't know what team you're going to get every week.
Yep.
Because there have been some weeks LA has looked legitimately like one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yep.
And then, for instance, the Miami game, they looked like a varsity high school team against an NFL team. Jared Goff looked bad. Jared Goff looked real bad in that game. So if LA can figure out their whole identity crisis thing, then maybe we could see them sneak into the playoffs. And if so, I would be kind of afraid to play them because they do have talent on the roster. But I don't see them. They're too back and forth for me to really think that they might make a push.
Okay, one more thing before Cato jumps in. I just looked at their schedule. They beat the Cowboys with Dak. I'll give them that. But they beat the
schedule?
Eagles.
Rams.
Rams. Excuse me.
Okay.
The Rams.
They beat Dallas with Dak, so I'll give them that. But the rest, they beat Philly. They've beaten the Giants. They've beaten Washington. They've beaten the Bears. They've lost to the Bills. They've lost to the 49ers, and they've lost to the Dolphins, who were all decent teams. But the rest, besides the Cowboys with Dak, are not good. So I think that's pretty strong pretenders there.
Those first three teams all had something in common, or first four teams rather all had something in common. They're all NFC West or NFC East teams. They literally beat the entire NFC East this season, so that's confusing. But the 49ers, I'm going to call pretenders. I think you're right. The injury bug has gotten them too good. It's just not going to be a consistent team going through the rest of the season. We talked about, or we will talk about some of their pass game a little bit later, I believe. But the running game has been just so beaten up. Jerick McKinnon out, as well as Raheem Mostert, who was probably poised to have a pretty good season, out. So I think they're probably pretenders going into the playoffs. The Arizona Cardinals have been sort of confusing because you beat the Seahawks. You have a close game with the Dolphins, who are a good team. They lost to both the Lions and the Panthers in the early season, and maybe that was first couple games jitters, whatever. But I'm confused.
I mean, both those teams are decent.
I mean, the Panthers are 3-6. The Lions are sitting
competitive
at
3-6 though.
Say that again.
They're a competitive 3-6 though.
Is 3-6 competitive when you win a third of your games? I mean, they're in their games.
We were just talking about how competitive Carolina was. I
think that they're a talented team, but I don't know. It's just I don't think Carolina can stick with the rest of the playoff teams, and they beat the Cardinals. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, but by no means am I sitting here saying Carolina's a contender, but they're not a bad team.
But you would imagine that a playoff contender is gonna beat teams like that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think so, but it's also the NFL. All these guys are paid professionals at their position, so it's one of those things where it's yes. If if Miami lost to the Jets, would we immediately take away their contender?
No, but the Cardinals have lost to the Lions and the Panthers and the Dolphins. So I don't know.
Looking
Like
at
I
their
said,
schedule, I think the Cardinals really only have 2 impressive wins.
that's
They beat the 49ers week 1 when they were completely healthy. Then they beat Seahawks in week 7.
overtime.
And then but they beat Dallas, they beat the Jets, Washington. That's not an amazing schedule. Then the teams that are halfway decent to have or having an okay season. Detroit, I know the record doesn't show it, but they've been in most of their games. Carolina, same thing. Dolphins are on a hot streak right now. So maybe there are more pretenders than I thought they were. But I still think they can survive in shootouts. I'll give them that.
I agree. I think I just don't want to I don't want to overthink it, obviously, but the Cardinals are very flashy. I just don't know if they have the chops to hang with some of the stronger NFC playoff teams. That's all. But the Rams, looking at their schedule remaining, they do have the Seahawks twice. They have the Bucks, the Cardinals, and the 49ers, or they have the Cardinals twice and the 49ers, along with the Jets and the Pats. So if we don't know if we don't know if the Rams are contenders or pretenders yet, we're about to find out because they're about to play some strong teams.
Jesus.
I want to throw in one more team before we go to break.
Please. Yeah, please.
You know, remember that one team that was in the NFC North that was 5-1? What are they? The Cubs? No, the Bears. They've lost 3 straight.
Chicago team.
And I think we mentioned it a few episodes ago. Like, all right, this is the stretch that'll be a tester stretch for them. They played the Rams, Saints, and Titans all in a row, and they lost all 3. I mean, they went to OT against the Saints, but that's about it. So I think it was already a foregone conclusion, but they're definite pretenders.
Yes, okay. Absolutely agree.
All I'm saying is if the Bears make the playoffs, we might be having to reevaluate this conversation. Big body part Nick Foles might do something.
Wouldn't a dream scenario be where the Bucks somehow get the 2 seed and then Chicago sneaks in at the 7 seed, so it's a rematch of Foles and Tom Brady, baby. After the Bears already beat them this year.
All I want is to see the Bears get into the playoffs and play Philly and just watch Nick Foles beat the dog shit out of Carson Wentz.
Oh, that's a better storyline.
That's all I want. That's all I want to happen.
On that note, we are going to slide into a quick break, but much more to come. Obviously, the long-awaited segment that everybody is hanging on the tips of their chins for backups of the week coming up right after this. And we will be with you in just a moment.
Hello, football fans. Ryan Cato here with the Backups Cast. If you're listening, I know you are a fan and you're listening on one of our podcast platforms, that is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe even Podbean, where we host. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to ISN Podcast Network and Brian Lamb. They'll be hosting our podcast on ISN Podcast Network for the remainder of the season, and we have some good things coming with them. If you don't mind giving us a quick follow on Twitter, you can find us at the Backups Cast, and all of our personal Twitters will be in the bio, as well as a subscribe on YouTube so you can see all of our beautiful faces each week during the podcast. That's enough of me, so we're going to get right back into the action.
We are back.
Boom.
Back onto backups of the week. We are the Backups, a football podcast. And you know that we're just so ready to talk about maybe Taysom Hill this week. When is it going to be Taysom Hill's week? I feel like we talked about Taysom Hill 9 episodes ago, and then he never came back up. And I just want to talk about my favorite fantasy tight end, but he's not my backup of the week
Tommy Sweeney?
because my backup. Oh, geez, Tommy Sweeney, best blocking tight end I ever seen. My backup
Dude,
of the week. Oh,
Honestly,
you got it.
before you say your backup of the week,
Get into it. I'm
it
gonna
is
keep you on
really
the edge.
funny talking about Taysom Hill in this because when we made like for context, when the three of us kind of like brainstormed this backups of the week thing, we were all like, okay, cool, Taysom Hill's gonna win it every week.
Yeah, he was the consensus backup of the week.
He hasn't been
Preseason.
nominated for a single backup of the week award yet.
I will tell you though, he maybe should have been nominated this week. He's not my backup of the week, but he was 2 for 2 for 48 passing yards, ran for 54 yards, and
Worth
caught
every
a,
penny.
and caught a 21-yard touchdown pass. Not a touchdown pass, 21-yard pass. So I bet he made a tackle or something. Like,
Some
he did
punt return or something.
He did something else. I don't know what it was, but you know who he wasn't as good as this week?
Who was he not good at?
My boy Jake Luton. Okay, let me tell you about him. Let me tell you about him. 6th-round pick out of Oregon State. He's big as fuck. He's 6'6". He's big as fuck. And he's 24 years old. He's just trying to play some damn football. And that he's going to do, okay? He's a former Beaver, but he's playing for the Jaguars. And threw for 304 yards this week. Threw a touchdown pass. Threw an interception, sure, but threw a long touchdown pass to DJ Chark, as well as ran in for one. And if you are listening to the podcast right now and you didn't see Jake Luton's little spin move at the goal line, pause, okay, and go watch it because it was very cute. Jake Luton did a great job and was backed up by his running game with James Robinson. So Jake Luton taking over for Gardner Minshew. He's my backup of the week, although he didn't get the dub. Maybe he convinced the Jaguars not to pick Justin Fields.
Yeah, I saw that. It was Alex Barnett on Twitter talking about it. He's like, I swear to God, if Jake Luton played well enough to not draft Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, I'm going to be pissed. And I mean, I don't blame him. As great as Jake Luton is, he's no Fields or Lawrence. But, you know who he's not as good as? He's not as good as my backup of the week, Garrett Gilbert.
Doubt it.
Garrett Antoine Gilbert.
Wait,
I don't know if that's
Garrett,
actually his
what
middle name.
now?
Garrett
I don't think
Antoine
you're reading that right.
Antone. Tell me
that's
that's not
Antoine.
Antoine. Tell me that's not Antoine.
That sounds like Antoine.
That's what I'm saying. I could be entirely mispronouncing this, but Garrett Antoine Gilbert led the Cowboys to what looked to be almost a win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't play amazing. He didn't, but the thing is, he played better than Ben DiNucci. He played better than Andy Dalton, which, granted, is not hard. It's not hard. But he's beaten 2 of my previous backups of the week.
Yeah.
And Garrett Gilbert had them in the game up until the last drive by Pittsburgh, where we watched them choke the game away. But all I'm saying is Garrett Gilbert could be the premier backup moving forward for the Dallas Cowboys.
All right.
fair-
As a third party, I will say Jake Luton was way better than Garrett Gilbert.
Thank you.
I mean, if we're going off stats, just looking at it, plus the spin move, you've got to throw that in there.
Plus the
I
spin
mean,
move,
Jake
of course.
Luton was the better QB. Sorry, Hunter, but Garrett Gilbert definitely deserves to have backup of the week for you just because they stayed in there with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are the only undefeated team left.
I do want to say almost a win is about as good as it gets for the Dallas Cowboys these days, and so that is admirable. Also, the Steelers put up 15 points in the fourth quarter, and Garrett Gilbert did lead the Cowboys to a 19-9 lead before the Steelers kind of came back.
Wow.
So I mean, it's something. He had 1 touchdown, but it was something against a pretty strong D. But yeah, Jake Luton is that boy. Check out the spin move, like I said. But we'll find out who the real boy is when they vote for backup of the week on our Twitter. By the way, go follow that. Trevor, I'd love to hear about your backup of the week.
And a little sneak peek at the actual winner after the poll. So I want to tell y'all some stats. So Devontae Adams, all right, obviously not a backup, but hold on a little. So he had 10 catches, 173 yards, and a touchdown. Holy shit. I mean, that's just Devontae Adams, right? Well, on the other side of the ball, this really widely known name was a huge, like, before the season, if you said this guy's name and he would outperform that performance by Devontae Adams, we would all say like that definitely happened. Richie James had 9 catches, 184 yards, and a touchdown, which is insane. Debo Samuel, freaking Brandon Ayuk, I don't even think played this week. So he stepped right in, even with their backup QB with Nick Mullins. I mean, he could have been backup of the week, but I think his receiver really outshone him. And it was, I mean, watching that game, it seemed like every ball that was caught was Richie James, and he did whatever he could with it. And it was a really impressive performance. And you just love to see it from just random guys. I mean, freaking Kyle Shanahan does it with running backs. Still have some no-name guy off the streets of San Francisco come in and rush for 100 yards. Well, now he just grabs some wide receiver and he goes off for 184 yards and a TD. I mean, that's already like a done deal. Backup of the week. Thanks for coming, guys, and thank you, Richie James.
Oh, that was decided so fast, apparently.
To be fair, he did outperform Devontae Adams, who had a crazy week this week. The 49ers were not in that game, like at all.
Nope.
It was just Richie James by himself. But yeah, hell of a week for him. And with, like we talked about earlier, a pretty banged up 49ers team, he was very productive last week. So hopefully we'll see more from him in the coming weeks. I think that's about all we got from backups of the week. If you boys have any closing arguments, notes, or comments, I'd love to hear.
I want to mention one more game, and that was supposed to be the game of the week, battle for the top of the NFC South, round 2, and it was the biggest dud of the year, in my opinion. The Saints came out, and I'm normally not the one who does sexual references in the show, but I'm going to throw one out there. I mean, they lathered up the Bucks butthole and just gave it to him. It was embarrassing on every level. Tom Brady had 3 interceptions.
Done to Trevor.
The reason Taysom Hill was even in contention for back of the week is because they were up so high on them. So it was just really, really bad week for a Bucks fan. And that's all I got. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, speaking of Taysom Hill, I did see a tweet that said Taysom Hill is like the pumpkin spice latte of the NFL season.
What?
Whenever he does well, the NFL season's in full swing. The fall is here. And I thought that was right. I thought that was accurate. Maybe he'll be back of the week next week. Taysom, if you're listening, dude, just keep playing. Keep playing your game, man. Keep trying. Keep doing your best. And fuck the Saints, by the way. And last but not least, hashtag fire Adam Gase.
Yep, as always.
Well, one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Jameis Winston is throwing 100% on the year so far. So that is really, really great improvement over last season.
He's 1 for 1.
One for 1 for 12 yards.
All I'm saying is, who's not throwing 100% on the season? Drew Brees.
Oh, Mr. Completion Percentage. Try Jameis Winston. Jeez. These analysts.
Good Lord. I don't have much past that. I mean, yeah, sure. Jameis Winston got paid $1 million and now he's 1 for 1. Bravo. I don't know. What is he bringing to that QB room? I have no clue. But
crab legs.
Dubs,
that was low hanging fruit.
Eating the dubs. Eating the dubs.
I forgot. That's a bit of the news.
Either way,
he finally ate a dub, baby.
Let's fire Adam Gase. I'm not for keeping him. I think the team is going to lose without him, so it doesn't really matter. But tank for Trevor as always. You can follow us at the Backups Cast on our Twitters, our personal Twitters in the bio. You can follow us there and see all the crazy shit we tweet anyway. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Backups Cast. And otherwise, I think that's about it. Have a great rest of your night. Fire Adam Gase.